Hi, this is Dancing Rabbit, and welcome to another late weekend pagan perspective. This week's question had to do with the blessing of the goddess, or receiving a blessing from the goddess, being blessed of the goddess. I don't think that any of those are terms or phrases that I've ever used to talk about, a ritual or a meeting, an event that I went to. I don't think I've heard pagans, that I know use that phrase. So I'm not totally sure what the questioner exactly meant. And if I miss it, I'd really appreciate that person doing a comment, and then maybe I can amend my answer. What I think you meant was a subjective spiritual experience when you feel or believe that you're encountering, becoming close to the goddess, or I suppose it could be one of the other gods or goddesses that you are pledged to. The way I think that that works, and it's just, the way that it's useful to me to conceptualize it, is something that's borrowed from the fairy tradition. It's the idea of the three selves. Some people call it the three souls. I'm not real sure what a soul is. But anyway, we have our talking self. That's the little voice in your head that's chattering away nonstop. It's very linked to language. It's linear. It's very useful. The second level, the second self, is the younger self, and that's who we were before we acquired language, maybe at a year and a half old, where we were directly experiencing the world around us through our senses, but we weren't putting names on things yet. We don't really operate at that level all that often, and one of the purposes, one of the uses of ritual is to bring yourself into that sort of consciousness, that sort of self, where you're not thinking in words, you're not thinking linearly, logically, you're not putting names on the things that you're seeing and experiencing. You're simply experiencing them. There are a number of ways to do that. A lot of the Eastern traditions use an empty mind meditation, where you're basically stopping your thinking about anything. I find that really difficult. I guess I'm just too Western. And I generally prefer a more active path of chanting or drumming or dancing, uh, or a combination of all three, or maybe more, using sights and sounds and smells that have symbolic ritual meaning to me, that I've used over and over in magic and in ritual. So it sort of triggers that part of my brain. When that shift occurs, I can definitely feel the shift, and it's very pleasant. And I think that that perhaps might be called by somebody receiving the blessing of the gods. I don't think that that's actually what it is. I think it's actually a shift in our consciousness inside our own mind. Now, fairy tradition goes on to say that the third self, or soul, the third level of consciousness, and you can talk about it being the top level, the higher level, or you can talk about it being a deeper level, just, whichever way you want to conceptualize, being maybe further removed from the ordinary. Anyway, that third level, the third level of consciousness, is that deeper, higher, that part of us that connects with the gods, with the divine. And the way that we get, that we're able to access that third self, that third level of consciousness, is through the second, through the younger self. So we can't, sitting here, like I'm sitting now, talking, using words, being analytical and all, we can't directly access the divine, the gods, that way. We can talk about them, but we're not talking to them, we're just describing about them. It's just a poor picture, a poor shadow of the real divine. But if we're able to shift into that younger self, then we're able to use that to get in touch with the higher or deeper self, the divine within, and through that able to make contact with, relate to, have a conversation with the gods. So I think what you're describing is the subjective shift in consciousness and what that feels like. Um, again, I suggest chanting, repetitious chant. If you're in a group, I find that group dancing is much more effective, a double circle, a spiral dance, than dancing by myself. But that's just me. I would suggest that you use techniques, whichever ones you find effective, and you should maybe try a number of them, and that way you'll know which ones work for you and maybe which ones kind of don't quite. But try a number of those techniques and pay attention to how you feel before you do your grounding, your centering. You feel a mild change in your awareness, and then you go deeper, and you go deeper still. But rather than seeking this feeling, seek the gods, seek the goddess, seek the divine itself. And I use it because we kind of don't have an English language pronoun for what I'm talking about that is both male and female, and in a sense neither. So don't seek the feeling so much as seek the reality, and understand that as you're getting close to the reality, the feeling is probably going to pop up. But if it doesn't, it doesn't. That's not really what you're after. So it's really late. I've tried to make this video several times and gotten all tangled up, and I feel like I'm on the verge of getting tangled up again and repeating and rehashing. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I suggest maybe you read Starhawk's book, The Spiral Dance. There's several chapters in it that relate to this, but I don't think that she uses the specific words, the blessing of the goddess or being blessed by the goddess. Okay, so my take on it till next time. I think next week is sub week, so it'll be the week after next. Bye bye, y'all.